My name is Victor. I am the occult technician, and this is Mind War. Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now, back to the show. Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Folks, today's episode is being recorded on December 29th, 2025, and what a year it has been. For those of you that have been following along, you remember that at the beginning of this year, we were finishing up the Mind War podcast series on the Gateway Experience tapes. At this time, in my personal life, my mother who was diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer just months before. She was in her final days. She was succumbing to this disease, and she passed away in early February. Right after her death, I moved back to my childhood home, aka the Mind War Manor, in order to be the sole caretaker for my father, who has end-stage dementia. Now, this was not my plan for 2025, right? And I thought for a second, let's talk about what that plan actually was, because there had been a plan in place for quite some time for what I thought was going to happen in 2025. So, about 2.5 years ago, I got a message from my friend Callie. Now, this was a woman who I dated when I lived back in California. We had dated for several years after my divorce. She's one of my best friends, and she told me that she was pregnant. And I was so excited to hear that. Callie had always wanted to be a mother, and I was so excited to hear that she finally had that opportunity. So, of course, I started to inquire, well, tell me about this man. Tell me about your relationship. What's going on, right? And she told me that basically it was just a very handsome young man that she had met. They spent a few nights together, sort of a fling, if you will. She found herself pregnant and basically contacted him and said that she would like to keep the baby. Again, she's always wanted to be a mother. And that really there was no obligation on his side. So from what I understand, this is the type of guy who has multiple children from multiple other mothers. He doesn't really take care of his other children. So she said, listen, I want to carry on with the pregnancy. You don't have to worry about it. I'm not asking you to be in a relationship or part of the child's life, but I really would like to be the mother, right? And so we started talking, and over the months and years, really kind of putting a plan in place. So prior to her giving birth, now this was about 3 months before she gave birth to the Moon Princess. You've heard me speak about her. And she told me that the bio dad had been less than excited about maybe not playing a role, and he was kind of harassing her. Unfortunately, this young man has had some trouble in his past. He had some drug issues, and he, I guess at this point in time, was kind of on the run from the law. He had a warrant out for his arrest for some drug felonies, I believe, that he had committed in the past. And he was, I believe, living in the same town that some of his family members lived in, right? And he told me that he was, or she told me that he was kind of harassing Callie and making things difficult for her. And now, already at this point, Callie and I started talking about this idea of her moving out here to Michigan with me after she gave birth and raising the Moon Princess in our little family. And one of the things that kind of worried me was this man. I said, well, if this guy's out there, he does have the right to be the father and everything. And I was a little concerned about that. And I had some hesitation, right? But again, she kept telling me that he was getting stranger. Maybe he was back on drugs because they did meet during a drug rehabilitation session, right? And I thought to myself, okay, this isn't good. We don't want to have this guy harassing her. And really, if we're going to try to attempt this idea of having a little family together, it's not going to work if he is in the picture. And so again, about 3 months prior to Callie giving birth to the Moon Princess, I did what I do best, and that is some dark arts, the black magic. During one of my rituals, during my listening to the Gateway Experience tapes, I put on one of the tapes where you're allowed to just sort of do whatever you need to do. Robert Monroe says this tape is for you. You go and do the work that you need to do. And so at that moment where I found myself floating in the darkness of the abyss, very angry, full of piss and vinegar, if you will, I remember screaming into the abyss, saying that it's time for this man to leave us alone. It's time for him to make his exit from the stage that is our life. Once I got done listening to the tape, I went in front of the altar. I was staring into the black mirror. I was pushing my anger in my state of somnambulance, listening to the hypnotic music. I was pushing my anger about this man, pushing my anger about him harassing Callie and causing this trouble in her life. I was pushing it into the black mirror, saying it's time for him to go. He has to go. We need him out of the picture. And folks, 3 days later, I received a text from Callie saying that the bio dad had been arrested. So what happened, again, he had already had a felony under his belt, I believe, and had some warrants for his arrest. And he went back to his family's house. I believe at this point, again, he was back on drugs, causing trouble. And he had a firearm in his possession. He went to his family home, and I believe, my guess is he was trying to get money or maybe steal things in order to feed his drug habit. But he wouldn't allow his family members to leave. They ended up calling the cops, and the cops came. And so again, here's what they found when the cops arrived. They found a man who already had a felony and a warrant out for his arrest, in possession of a firearm. So now you have a felon with a firearm possession. And he was holding his family at bay, aka kidnapping. That's not good, folks. You get into a lot of trouble for that type of stuff. And so again, over the next few months, Callie gave birth very successfully to the Moon Princess. And we kept a very close eye in what was going on with the BioDads case. And sure enough, it took a few months to kind of get all of this sorted out and get the ruling. But he is currently in prison for 10 years. Now, once we learned of this, that concern that I had that this man would possibly try to come and interfere with our plans, that melted away. I said, okay, 10 years, that's long enough for us to establish a life together, long enough to do all the paperwork we need to do for things like marriage and adoption, all things that I hope to do in the future. Of course, when I'm done with my art project, we have a few more years here. And really settle into our little family. And that's exactly what we did. And so again, we had been working on this plan for quite some time, because Callie didn't move out here until the Moon Princess was well over a year old. So again, she had given birth, and then we talked for about a year. She wanted to make sure that she had time to kind of recover and just relax. She was living with her mom at the time. It was a perfect scenario to raise the Moon Princess as a small baby, a little infant, right? And then we said, okay, in the spring of 2025, that'll be a perfect time for you to move out. And again, that corresponded perfectly timed with the passing of my mother. So this plan that we had, which was to live here in the Mind War Estates together as this little family, it was thrown, there was a real stick thrown in the spokes of our plan. But we decided to move forward anyways. And I'm so glad that we did, right? So Callie and the Moon Princess moved out in early 2025. I think it was late March, maybe early April. And honestly, it has worked out pretty well. They get to live here at the Mind War Estates with Douglas, their 130-pound cane Corso, a real beast of a dog. And they get to have the space that they need to kind of heal and grow and recover from life, right? And again, I spend most of my time at the Mind War Manor with my father, caring for him. But what's nice is that we spend so much time together, a real back and forth. I spend a lot of time over here. They come over constantly, multiple times a week. They spend the night over there. It's really nice, right? And we really have made the best of it. And over these last 9 months, Callie has just began her transformation, and the results have been amazing, right? She's lost almost 60 pounds since she's been here. She was able to, her doctor had her on a whole stack of SSRIs that were causing quite a bit of trouble for her. We've narrowed it down to one low-dose medication that she takes, and she seems to be happier and healthier than she's been in years. The idea in this, again, this ability for her to have a home to care for, take on the responsibility of it, while being one of the best mothers I've ever seen. It's just been so amazing to watch this progress, right? And then, of course, the Moon Princess. When she got here, she was just a tiny little baby. She could barely walk. She only could say a few words. And folks, now, just amazing. She's tall and muscular. She is running and jumping and spinning and twirling and twisting just all over the place. So hilarious. She speaks. It's just amazing watching her learn language, right? We went from just barely knowing how to say mama and papa and then struggling to learn one word every few days. And now, as we speak to her, she just is constantly repeating the main words of the sentence. So if we say something like, "Can you please close the refrigerator door?" she'll say, "Close door." And then if I'm cooking, she says, "Daddy cooking eggs," right? Because of course I told you about my egg recipe. And then I'll say, "Okay, it's time to sit down at the table." She'll say, "Sit, table," and go over, and she gets herself into her little high chair. It's just been amazing to watch. And we really, even with the flux of these transformations, right? Again, my mother passing away, I having to take on this responsibility of caring for my father who has end-stage dementia, living in my childhood home again. Callie and the Moon Princess moving across country here to Michigan and, taking up residence here in my home. The Mind War Estates, right? Even with all that, we just had such a great time and really made the best of it. And we just enjoyed the spring, and then into the summer. It was just amazing. What an amazing summer we had. It was full of really just sitting in the sun, a lot of grilling in the backyard, just relaxing. We would go to the park. My dad has an old golf cart that him and Mom used to have up at their campground, so we drive the golf cart all around our little subdivision, the Rambling Acres subdivision, and we just had such a great time. And then we moved into the fall, where we were preparing the Mind War Manor. I did so much work over there this year, folks. The house was in decent shape, but it just needed a lot of elbow grease and some repairs, right? But we just worked so hard in preparing for a birthday party for my father in the fall, which was just amazing. My Gemini twins came and visited for several weeks prior to the party, and then we had dozens and dozens of friends and family come. It was such a huge success. It was wonderful celebrating my father after my mother's death. He really was so happy for that. And then we moved right into the holiday seasons, right? We had a wonderful Halloween. The Moon Princess, we dressed her as Donald Trump. We got her a little blue suit with a red tie. Absolutely hilarious. Everyone thought it was so sweet. And then I'm telling you, folks, we just got done having such a great Christmas. And I know I come down here and I talk against Christianity quite a bit. But Jesus is not the reason for the season in our celebrations. We really just wanted to celebrate time together and celebrate our family. And that's exactly what we did. We had several days of sleepovers and just, enjoying time together. We had lots of presents under the tree for everyone. It was really such a great time and so much fun to have a child back in our lives to celebrate Christmas with. It really, just brought a smile to everyone's face. We just had such a wonderful time. And that's why today's episode is late, folks. I'm not going to lie, right? We had so much fun. And it was really just such an amazing year. Despite all the difficulties that we went through, all the major transformations that we went through, we just kept doing it. We kept putting in the work, right? And the whole time, through all of these massive transformations that went on in my life, I still came down here every week to talk with all of you. We finished up the Mind War podcast series on the Gateway Experience tapes. And then we moved right in to the Mind War podcast series on magic, which is what we're doing right now. And I think this has been a very successful series so far. I have been uploading it to Spotify. So now it is on almost all of the major podcast platforms except Apple. Apple still won't let me on. No big deal. And I've been going back and re-listening to all the episodes. And folks, I don't mean to toot my own horn here, but what an amazing show that we've put on here. It was so amazing going back and hearing all of these episodes that are leading up into these final few episodes of this Mind War series on magic. So I have promised you a story about how I actually became a magician. And I'm going to tell you that story when we return in just a moment. All right, welcome back, folks. So we are going to pick up where we left off over on my magical journey on Instagram at The Occult Technician. So we are going to kind of review a post that we talked about a few episodes, and this is the post from December 26th, 2023. This was the cold moon. You see the blue triangle there and the light blue sigil. And now this was the post where I had pulled the death card, okay? And if you remember this story, I pulled the death card in that month of December 2023. And 2 weeks after I pulled the death card, my Gemini twins called me and told me that my uncle-in-law, Uncle Steve, who was basically my Gemini twins' sort of like grandfather figure when we lived out in California. Him and Aunt Care, they were our really only family out there. They were, major influences in my life for 20 years. My Gemini twins called me 2 weeks after I pulled the death card and told me that Uncle Steve had been diagnosed with end-stage liver cancer. And 2 weeks later, he had passed away. So literally from December 26th, 2023, which was the night of the full moon, again, where I pulled the death card, until January 25th, 2024, Uncle Steve had passed away. Now, this was the first event in my magical work where I really was taken aback in a very serious way. For all of the things that we've talked about so far, all of the coincidences, I know we don't believe in coincidences here in the Mind War, but for all of these things that have happened all up until now, this is the one that really struck me like, whoa, what is happening here? I pulled the death card on a full moon in December, and by the next full moon in January, a member of my family had passed away. That was very intense. And so on January 25th, 2024, we had talked about this post already again. Again, we're just kind of doing a little review. This was the next full moon. And on that full moon, we pulled the Page of Wands. Now, we had talked about this a little bit before, the Page of Wands. So when you think of the Page of Wands or the Page of Cups or the Page of Pentacles, right? I like to think of the page as sort of like an intern or an initiate. And their job is to care for the wands, right? This sort of esoteric or occultic figure in your life, not a real person, right? Other than yourself, because ultimately you are playing all of the parts in your magical work, right? So you have this figure in your life, the Page of Wands. Okay, so now there is this sort of initiate, this sort of intern in my life who is caring for magic wands. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. So that was on December 25th, 2024 that I pulled the Page of Wands. And now we go through the next few posts. We had already reviewed them. But when we go to February 10th, 2024, this is just 2 weeks after pulling the Page of Wands. If we look at that post, so on the January 25th, 2024, I pulled the Page of Wands from the tarot card deck called the Magnolia Tarot deck, right? 2 weeks later, on February 10th, 2024, from the Goetia tarot card deck, a completely different tarot card deck, on the new moon, I pulled the Wand card, or the Ace of Wands. So again, we had the Page of Wands, who is this initiate or this intern caring for our wands. The very next ceremony, ritual that I went through, I pulled the Wand card. Okay. Now, folks, if you want to think of this as an advanced magical tool that I'm teaching you here, what it is to listen to the cards. And when they tell you to act, act. So again, February 10th, 2024, I pulled the Page of Wands from the Magnolia Tarot deck. 2 weeks later, I pulled the Wand card, the Ace of Wands, from the Goetia Tarot card deck. The very next day, February 11th, 2024, I made this magic wand. I listened to the cards and I did the work. Now, if you look at that post from February 11th, 2024, it says, when the cards speak, we listen. Let's start all the way at the final, picture there, number 6. What you see is 2 sticks, right? So basically, this wand here is made out of a stem or branch of a marijuana plant that I had grown years ago. And I had dried it here in the basement of the Mind War Estates prior to even beginning magic. I just thought, oh, these are kind of cool. The whole trunk of the marijuana plant. I had these giant stems and everything, and I thought, well, I'm just going to let these dry out. I actually taped them to a long board so they would stay straight. I had no idea why I was doing it back then. And again, that's one of the things that we've talked about over and over again, is you may not understand why you're doing this work, but do it. Especially in those early years, do the work. Because again, it takes time for all of these things to kind of come to the surface about why you're doing these things, right? So again, that 6th picture, you can see that this wand is made up of 2 separate pieces. The first picture, or the first stick there, you can see that I'd already cleaned it off. The other one still had all the branches and the bark on it. If we go to the 5th picture, you can see that I cleaned that all up and sanded it down. The 4th picture there, I glued the 2 sticks together, and then I used wood putty that you would normally, or like a wood filler, that if you're doing woodworking projects and you need to cover up nail holes or screw holes, things like that. I basically just coated the whole wand in it, let it dry and harden. And then in the next picture, picture number 3 there, I sanded it all down. And then in picture number 2, I had stained it black. And then that first picture, again, you can see that I added the leather binding here that kind of helps hold the wands together, the 2 separate pieces of the wand together. And then I added these 2 rings. You can see these rings here. It might be difficult to see on the camera, but you've seen these rings in the past. They are 2 obsidian rings, and I added them as sort of they kind of hold. It's kind of hard to do here on the podium because it wants to slide down. But when I set the wand down, it kind of is like a stand for the wand, right? So we pulled the death card. We had a death in the family. This was very intense for me. The next tarot card pull was the Page of Wands. The following tarot card pull after that, from a totally different tarot card deck 2 weeks after it, was the Wand card. I made the wand. I listened to the cards. The very next day, I made this wand. Now, the next full moon, the next card that I pulled, on the next full moon from the Magnolia Tarot card deck was the Magician card. And now I knew. Now I knew that I actually had become the magician. The cards were speaking to me. I was listening to them. I was following their instructions, and I was rewarded with this sort of promotion to actually becoming a magician. And folks, this is 2 years into my magical work. 2 years and almost 3 months of work before I actually became a magician. This, my guess is in secret societies and stuff, they have their different promotional ceremonies, and it's all laid out for them. You have to do this, that, and the other to get promoted, right? That's not what we do here in the Mind War. That's not what we do here with this chaos magic. We allow the magic to work through us. It works in its own time. But we have to listen. We have to listen to the cards when they speak to us. And now, I'm telling you, this wand, when I talked before about, a few episodes ago, when you stand in front of your altar and you are there's just one candle lit on your altar. You're in the state of somnambulance. You've already listened to the tapes. The psilocybin is flowing. You know the routine. This is the wand where I would stand in front of my altar, close my eyes, so I could then see a sort of negative version of my altar floating in front of me in the abyss. And this is the wand that I would use to create portals in front of me. You can create portals where you can push energy into them, pull energy out of them. You can do remote viewing through the portals, whatever you want to do. You can draw sigils with this. Whatever work that you want to do, it's up to you. But this is what I did. Again, I listened to the cards, and I understood where they were guiding me, and I was rewarded with being called the magician. So folks, that is a story that I've wanted to share with you for quite some time. Again, 2 years and a couple of months into my magical work, I finally was rewarded with being told, here, you are finally a magician now. That's how long it's going to take. It's going to take time. The transformation that's going to come to your life is going to take at least 3 years. It took at least 3 years for mine. I told you before about the beautiful young woman that I lived with who really taught me magic. It took her 3 years to transform. I watched her transform in front of me over this 3-year period. It takes time. Don't try to rush it. Don't try to force it. Allow the work to happen. Do the work even when you don't know why you're doing it. Just keep moving forward. That's the most important part, because everything will reveal itself in time. Now, folks, when we get back, we're going to pick up where we left off in the book Magic, History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. We have quite a bit of reading to do. We don't have a ton of episodes left in this series, so we're going to have to really put some serious work in. As far as the magical journey over on Instagram, there aren't a whole lot of additional posts that are really groundbreaking, except one set that we're going to save for the final episode of this series. So we're going to really tear through those when it's time. But again, when we get back, we're going to put in some real work on the book Magic, History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl in just a moment. All right, welcome back, folks. We're going to pick up where we left off in the book Magic History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. We left off on page 107, the final chapter of that page, and it says this: the consecration, the transfer into the state of sanctification by means of ecstasy in antiquity happened in the so-called mysteries at the hand of a master. The natural state of sanctification was always taken for granted. That is to say, only humans were admitted who appeared to be worthy. This natural, pre-existing, before ecstasy state of sanctification was much more frequent in antiquity than today, since the overall milieu was exerting a constant diffuse fertilization. So again, as we've talked about in the past, magic was just a normal part of life in primeval days. It was flowing throughout our lives. And this idea of sanctification, as we just talked about, my story of actually becoming the magician, it takes time. I did not have a master, in a way, telling me, here's what you need to do to become the magician. Again, as we've talked about before, when you see pictures of me with the 12 disciples, 12 different versions of me, Victor is that master. Uncle Vic, he is the master in my life who was teaching me these things. Again, I was teaching myself these things through this reading, through the work we learned from the masters of the past, right? But it was ultimately Uncle Vic who was really leading me through this. He was the master that I was following. And you have to play these roles in your life. You have to be the master and the initiate in your own life if you are doing magic as a solo journey. It's okay to do that. And it's a good thing, because you have that duality of trusting in yourself that you have the knowledge in you, and being, proud enough of yourself and solid enough in your own abilities to know that you are a master. But you're also humble enough at the same time, knowing that you are still the initiate, that you still have work to do, that you still have so much to learn and experience. It's okay to do that. And then through that, you will have that sort of self-sanctification. Sanctification was also called reincarnation. The old ones already knew that the necessary ecstasy was a free gift from the gods. That is to say, is a mercy of fate, and is never enforceable by means of certain practices. Again, like we've talked about before, there are no pre-written set of instructions that you can go follow for this type of work to become successful in your life. It's going to be different for everyone if you are serious about doing magic and becoming a magician. R. Retzenstein, looks like an author here, writes about this, and he says, "This cannot be taught. Only God can awake it in your heart. The process is a begetting. The begetter is God's will, of course. A human father is also acting, who was predestined by his will, and who must himself be reborn, that is to say, become the Son of God, because that is the effect of this begetting. The human becomes the all in all, just like God, and consists himself of the forces of God." Okay. So Retzenstein was using the word God. We also know the cosmic dynamic forces, the absolute, the universe, whatever you want to call it, right? And he talks about becoming the Son of God. Oh, where have we heard that before? With a man they call Jesus Christ, a.k.a. Yeshua, also known as what we would call today Joshua, right? This guy named Josh. He was an interesting fellow back in the day if he was a real person. He told us that he was the Son of God and that he had God inside of him just like we all do today. You are no different than the man known as Jesus Christ. He is no better than you. He is no different than you. He has no more power than you. Do not idolize him. Do not put him on a pedestal to worship. When I read through the Bible and hear what he has to say, that's exactly what he's telling you. He is no different than you are. You have the exact same abilities inside of you that he did. You have the exact same chance at having the spiritual experiences that he went through. There is no difference. We all have God inside of us when we go through this process. Of course, it's innate. We're born with it. Again, we are born moral. But over time, when the organizations, corporations, and institutions that pollute our minds, poison our bodies, and corrupt our souls, when they force these societal, cultural, and religious wet blankets upon ourselves, we lose our natural selves. And so in this process of removing all of this filth from us, killing our old selves, and being reborn into our new selves, we regain that original God consciousness, Christ consciousness, this original connection with the absolute, the universe, the cosmic dynamic forces. It's kind of that simple, folks. It's not the complicated nonsense that we hear in Christianity where it's, well, this scripture goes back to this scripture and this, none of that. It doesn't need to be that way. And Jesus can be just another guy in the long list of the greats, right? Just like Dr. Ernst Schertel and all the men that we've gone through and read through all of their books, they're really no different. We all have that same ability. We just got to do the work. The whole existence has to be oriented to ecstasy and to unification with the demon, and has to appear as preparation and product of these moments. Again, when you're doing magic, the preparatory process where we are taking the THC and the psilocybin, we're doing some exercise, we've cleaned our house, we've got our altar ready. We then go lay down and listen to the Gateway Experience tapes, putting us in the state of somnambulance. We are now literally hypnotizing ourselves. We are in a state of sleepwalking. We come out into the altar room. We are standing in front of our altar. We are listening to our hypnotic music. We are doing our breath work. We're doing our kundalini. We're using the advanced magical techniques like the stare. While you do this stuff, you will be in a state of ecstasy. It feels amazing. The chemicals are flowing. The natural chemicals that your body produces, plus the chemicals of the THC and the psilocybin. Absolute ecstasy is what you're going to be in. And you there will be a unification with your demon. What is your demon? Demons are simply a character representation of human emotions, right? They are representations of human characteristics, just the same things that all humans go through, all the different emotions and feelings that we have in the past. They simply created characters in order to help share what it feels like to have these different issues. Again, when you talk about being, gluttonous, right? The demon is a big fat monster. It's such an easy thing to understand. Demons are not this wild, complicated mess that we hear Christians talk about today. They are not flesh and bone monsters who are going to come scratch you in your bed. None of that is real. They are simply characters that represent human emotions. And so while we do our work, while we are in this state of ecstasy, again, we hold on to our emotions and we harness them. We harness our emotions of anger, hate, resentment, whatever it is. Or if you've moved past that and you're doing white magic, your magic of love and calmness and contentment, we're harnessing all of those emotions instead of killing them with alcohol and drugs or self-harm, whatever it may have been, right? We harness those emotions, and that's called communing with your demon. It's that simple, folks. It's not this complicated mess that we're hearing out there in social media today. Again, back to the author R. Retzenstein, also exploitates this. He says this, the highlight of religious life is ecstasy, which reaches its most complete and unmistakable form in mystery. If a person is unifying in it with God, he has to hereby gain immediate knowledge, which must be independent of all prior knowledge. And he now talks of God through the servant, who is dedicated to him. The revelation and the immediate view remain also for the priest effect, and highlight of the true cult. Okay. This idea of leaving or stepping away from your old knowledge and gaining new knowledge. How did I explain this to you before? Okay. I told you, I tried to believe. I tried to believe in the organizations, corporations, and institutions. I tried multiple different forms of Christianity, including almost joining the cult that my best friend Joey, aka Deog from the 12 Tribes cult, the cult that runs the Yellow Deli, I almost left my life behind to join a cult. I tried so hard. I joined the United States military. I went to university. I did everything that I thought I needed to do, and all of it was empty, and all of it felt like lies. It felt like manipulation. All of it. And finally, at my lowest point in life, where I just no longer believed in anything, the light bulb went off. It dawned on me. Do the things that the Bible tells us not to do. The Bible tells us to stay away from black magic, the dark arts. And again, of course, stay away from the nasty parts of it. Again, all of this stuff you see on social media about black magic and the dark arts, all this filth and disgust that they try to put on top of it, again, that's a poison pill, folks. They put that type of stuff on the magic, the occultism that we do here in the Mind War. The society and culture, they add this filth on top of it. The same way that for books like this, there always has to be some type of conspiracy and controversy that goes along with these books in order to get us not to read them. You have to see past these lies. And when you do, you get to the beauty and the truth of all of this. And like the author Retzenstein says, you get to the new knowledge. It wasn't until I finally put all of those old things that I was told, this is how you're supposed to do it. This is how we've always done it. This is how you're supposed to do it. This is the only way. Once I put all of that garbage behind me and started searching for information and truth, no matter where we found it. Every book that we've read in this podcast, the Mind War podcast, every book that we've worked from has had authors full of controversy and full of conspiracy. We looked past all of it and we found some of the most amazing truths. We do not possess the, to some extent, enormously complicated means anymore, which the old ones had at their disposal for the consecration. Most notably, the most important is generally missing, the master. Again, you will be the master in your own magical journey. you also are here with a master today. At this point, with the work that I've done, I can confidently call myself a master magician. I can confidently say to you that the things I've learned and the things I experienced would put me in that category of master. We may never meet in person. We may never even communicate through social media. But you are learning through this medium everything that I've went through. You are currently in contact with the master. Here, today's man also usually does not possess that sensibility combined with strong animalism, which would be necessary for the demonic act of begetting. Okay, so again, begetting is this idea of leaving past knowledge behind, finding new knowledge, and then putting in the work to actually do the magical work to get yourself into a state of ecstasy in order to commune with your demons like we just spoke about. And you have to have strong animalism. Again, you have to eat healthy. You got to eat the meat. You have to be exercising. You have to do the semen retention in order to get the kundalini to work. You can't be unhealthy, eating fast food, spilling your seed every day, exhausted, being an alcoholic. All of that stuff is going to drain you of all of those naturally occurring chemicals that you need in order to get into that state of ecstasy while you're in the state of somnambulance. You cannot do this if you are drained and exhausted. It's just not going to work. You need strong animalism. In this manner, everything remains imperfect, piecemeal work. And that we can give here, and what we can give here is a small number of direction signs to the peaks, which will be climbed only by a very few. So again, they're just giving us through this book, Magic, History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl, he's just giving us a few road signs, just a little bit of direction. And that's what we've done through the Mind War podcast. It's just been one breadcrumb after another. Remember, early on, when I first put on the costume of Uncle Vic, the song that we played, we talked about holding the candlestick in the darkness. You're in the abyss. Darkness surrounds you. You have just your little candlestick in your hand. And all it does is show you the path, maybe 2 or 3 feet in front of you. And that's all you need. You keep going. And that song perfectly describes what it's like going through the Gateway Experience tapes. When you are in the abyss, when you are in the darkness of the upside down world or the sleep dojo, you don't see the full path in front of you. It's like a video game. It renders in front of you as you move towards it. But you have to have the courage. There is no fear here in the Mind War. And you take that candlestick in the darkness and you keep walking forward. I promise you the path is going to illuminate as you go, but you have to do it. You cannot be afraid. The next sentence I highlight, and it says this: the following exertions must only be practiced at night. Interesting. Since it is much more advantageous for the appearing of magical effects than the day. The old mysteries were also always carried out at night, and the constellations of the stars, especially of the moon, always received rigorous attention. Folks, I've told you, I'm not this big astrology guy. I don't know all the constellations and all that stuff, but I knew one thing, that throughout history, the moon has played a massive part in spiritualism. That's why I pull the tarot card on the full moon, where the light reflects from the full moon, shines down upon us, and shows us our true selves and what we are going through at that moment, and the cards reflect it. Just like the death card that I pulled on the night of a full moon, that was shining the light on my life and the upcoming death that was going to occur in my family. And then I pull the demon card from the Goetia Tarot card deck. On the new moon, the night where it is dark, I ground myself as much as I can in order to really prepare to commune with whatever this new spirit is, to where I learn from them. And again, one of the things about doing this work at night, you are getting yourself into a state of mind with the psilocybin, with the music, all the things that we do in order to have hallucinations. And the hallucinations at night are much easier to have because your eyes are struggling to see things. And that's what you want. You don't want clear visions of the world around you. You want your eyes to constantly be dilating and contracting as you see the light of the candle flicker. Or if you put on some low light, I used to do this a lot with these little lights that would change color, constantly just swirling from one color to the next. That may be the only light in the room. And when you do that, your eyes are constantly fluctuating, and this is going to cause that hallucinatory effect. So again, the nighttime is very important to do this, and especially, as the author here says, especially of the moon, you have to pay rigorous attention. Beautiful. This is what I talk about when I go through this work. I don't know what I'm doing, but I feel and have these intuitive kind of natural instincts to do this stuff on certain nights, right? Doing these things in certain ways. And then I go back and I reread and I say, look at this. This is confirming the work that I intuitively knew to do. Robert Bloom tried to give explanation for this. This is another author. The moon constitutes the negative pole of the heavenly battery, the sun, earth, moon, and the electropositive sun rays stream upon that site of the earth which is turned towards the sun, penetrate it, and leave as electronegative at the opposite hemisphere, and now stream towards the moon. These negative rays are modified according to the phase of the moon. At night, that is to say, on the hemisphere of the earth which is turned towards the moon, the negative streams are causing the nerves to go limp and to only function automatically. The brain is atrophied. The oscillations of the nerve ether in the ending neurons are completely stopping, and impressions from the outside physical world can therefore not be transferred to the sense ether of the soul anymore, and no feelings are arriving from there at the consciousness. We can now this goes back to Dr. Ernst Schertl. He says, we can therefore understand that the negative nature of light and the moon is benefiting the incidence of ecstatic states because these demand a stepping out of the profane empirical environment. Again, we are trying in a way to kind of create that the tank, right, where you go in the tank and you don't feel anything, you're just floating in the water. We're trying to get into that state where we are not being constantly bombarded by the outside world. We want to sort of wall ourselves off from any of these external sources of energy. We want to be able to harness the things inside of us when we do this work, and the nighttime is the perfect way to do it. And what an interesting way of explaining it, that when the light of the sun is on the other side of the earth and it's not coming down and beating upon us, right, that the negative flow of energy from us, we can allow the energy to escape from our being, escape from the earth, and move outwards instead of being bombarded by the sun and having the rays being pushed towards us. kind of eloquent and beautiful in its strange scientific way. That explanation there. So let's go on. I think I highlighted some of this next part. Oh, and so did Adolf Hitler. Again, this book, Magic History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl was supposedly one of Adolf Hitler's favorite books. There was an author who did some research on Hitler's library and found that Hitler's copy of the book Magic History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl was one of the most well-read and worn out in his collection, and he had all sorts of highlighted things. So this next paragraph, both Hitler and I highlighted, so it must be very important. Let's see. The first state we try to create is the one of complete erasure. This erasure is related to the phenomenon of sleep and of the death. Only through annihilation, destruction, decomposition does new existence come into being. Because like I said, you have to kill your old self before your new self can be reborn. You have to let go of old knowledge before you can accept new knowledge, especially if the knowledge that you have is dogma. Meaning, like I've said before, if you find yourself working at an organization, corporation, or institution that already has an established set of knowledge, you are not able to think outside of the box, because the moment that you do, you become a threat to that establishment and they will kick you out. That's no way to live. You have to constantly be open to learning new information. The profane so-called normal existence must suffer a deep concussion. It must experience such an effective breakdown and de-essentialization in order that it is rearranging itself into a new reality. You must allow your old normal existence to be destroyed. Only then can you step into this new form, this new reality that the author says. Now, again, Hitler highlighted this part here. It says, Omar al-Rashid Beg, another author, says this: the world is through fight. Life is through annihilation. All construction is through destruction. All emergence is through vanishing. In all becoming lies unbecoming. Again, man, if you're going to build a house out of lumber, in order for you to create, build, construct the home that is made out of wood, you have to chop down a tree. You have to destroy a tree in order to create the lumber to build your house. It's constant flux, constant change. The state of erasure can be compared to an illness, as Pyrite Shao, another author, says, the soul becomes ill because of the first consecration, because of singings, evocations, postures, similar to an cirrhotic infection. Through the first initiation did that cirrhotic poison penetrate into the soul, a poison which stimulates, excretes, and heals. So what have we talked about with psilocybin? It is a form of poison. Now that's the duality that we're talking about. You use the psilocybin, which is a known poison. That's why I tell you, take the powdered form of the psilocybin directly onto the tongues, the magic mushroom directly on the tongue. Taste it. Don't cover it up with candy and jelly and all sorts of nonsense. Taste the poison so you have reverence for what you are putting into your body. And that allows you to change and dissolve and destroy some of those old ways of thinking, which is the duality part of it. You use a physical poison to help destroy the knowledge poison, the old dogma poison, right? Those things are poison as well. We have to get those things out of us. We have to destroy it in order to, as the author states here, a poison which stimulates, excretes, and heals the soul. We're going to leave off there, folks, on page 110. Another great episode here of the Mind War podcast. It feels great to be back down here. Again, sorry this episode was a little bit late. It's been almost a month since I've been down here in the Mind War studios. It feels great to be back with all of you. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. I appreciate you being here. And as always, remember, folks, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.